Okay, the first project we're going to make with our t-shirts are upcycled t-shirt tote bags. So what you're going to need is an old t-shirt, some scissors, a marking pen, some sewing pins, a plate, and then your sewing machine. So let's get started. First thing you're going to want to do is take your t-shirt, lay it smoothly on the table, especially the top portion. Make sure it doesn't have any wrinkles. Take your plate and position it on your shirt, making sure not to overlap any graphics that you want to have showing on your bag. Then we're just going to trace out our plate around the neckline. Now make sure that the spacing between where your plate is and then the sleeve is wide enough that you're going to be able to have straps right here. So I now have my circle cut out. I'm now going to take my scissors and cut the neckline out. This is a lot easier if you get a nice pair of sewing scissors, but you can use any type of scissors you have around. It just might be a little bit more difficult to cut through the fabric. Okay, now once you have your neckline cut out, then we're going to cut out the sleeves. Now make sure when you cut out the sleeves that you leave the seam line intact. This will create a nice strong seam for your bag. And try and pay attention to the seam on both sides and don't cut out the seam line that's on the back of the sleeve. To that side and the other side. Okay, we now have our top portion of the bag. So let's turn our shirt inside out. Lay it back on your work surface. And then you're going to take your pins and pin your shirt closed at the bottom. Now, you don't have to use pins if you feel secure in sewing without them. I normally probably wouldn't use pins, but if you don't sew that often, it's a little bit easier to hold the fabric together if you have pins. Now what I'm going to do is bring this over to my sewing machine and sew a straight stitch along the seam line that's already there. Make sure that your fabric is lined up on both sides so that when you sew your seam line, it's going to go through both sides of the t-shirt. So let's bring this over to the sewing machine. Okay, here we are at the sewing machine, and I'm just going to sew a straight stitch. If you want extra strong, you might want to use a zigzag stitch or a double overlock stitch to create your seam, but a straight stitch will work just fine also. Just make sure that when you do your seam that you back stitch a little bit at the beginning and end of your stitch to seal in those seams. And back stitch once again. And just trim off the loose ends, and let's bring it back over to the table. Okay, once you have your seam sewn at the bottom of your shirt, you're just going to want to turn it right side out and grab those little corners just to poke them out a little bit. there you have it. There's your upcycled t-shirt tote bag. Great for carrying things, super cheap to make, and just really useful and cute looking. So I hope you enjoy this project, and let's move on to our next one.